I want to now raise the big questions. Is Pakistan paying a price, in a way, for the manner it's dealt with terror? Has Pakistan now been encircled by the BLA along with Taliban-linked groups? Is Pakistan simply a country imploding when it comes to terror and under siege? I'm joined by special guests. Tehreek-e-Taliban is a former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan and a distinguished author. Amar Mustaqan is a senior Baloch journalist based in Washington. Aisha Siddiqa joins me, Pakistan political scientist in London. I want to come to each of you. First to you, Amar Mustaqan. Explain to us what the BLA hijacking a train means for what has been this long-running insurgency in the area.
First of all, I thank you, and I will say welcome to the Baloch spring. This is the spring for which the Baloch people have been waiting for 78 years. You cannot divorce what is happening today from the events of 78 years ago. This is the continuation. It's a reaction to the continuation of Pakistan military brutalities, which began when Mr. Jinnah was still there. The censor that happened during the first Baloch insurgency was ordered by Mr. Jinnah. So this is the continuation. The problem in Pakistan is of the Pothohar generals. The Atak, Chakwal, Jhelum, and Rawalpindi, the generals sitting there, they are the jihadists who have entered Balochistan, and our people have the right to defend their lives and their honor and their land against the occupiers.
Okay, hearing what you are saying, Tehreek-e-Taliban, the Pakistanis could flip that and say that in the context of Kashmir, is Balochistan Pakistan's worst nightmare, given what's happened? And is there a parallel that Pakistanis can draw with the situation in Kashmir, or are they completely different?
Well, the situation is certainly very bad, and this train hijacking escalates the whole cycle of violence which has been plaguing Pakistan for the past year and a half. In 2024, there has been a very, very definite upstick in terrorist attacks, both in Balochistan as also in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And this most extraordinary hijacking of an entire train with hundreds of passengers is certainly something very unusual and perhaps also the consequence of a major intelligence failure on the Pakistan side. The fact that an operation of this size and this complexity can be undertaken without leaving, in fact, the security forces completely at dark does suggest a major intelligence failure, and also points to a growing dysfunctionality of the Pakistani security apparatus when it's dealing with these terrorist threats, whether from the TTP or from the BLA. Now, the fact is that the Baloch have had long-standing grievances, and there's really been very little effort or sustained effort to address those grievances by way of a political dialogue. So in that context, whatever parallels the Pakistanis may wish to draw, those parallels don't really work, because you have a highly securitized response to what is essentially a political problem, and a problem which of denial of civic rights, economic rights, and political rights. So this highly securitized response, in fact, comes out of the nature of the Pakistani state itself, because the military has been running affairs for so long that there's almost a Pavlovian response to every political situation that arises. And that Pavlovian response is a highly securitized response.
Aisha Siddiqa, you're hearing what Tehreek-e-Taliban is saying. It reflects at one level the dysfunctionality of the Pakistan state, particularly if, as is being suggested, the Tehreek-e-Taliban have now come together with the BLA. It poses a huge security challenge to the Pakistani state. How do you see this train hijack? Is it, as the Balochis are claiming, a new spring in their liberation struggle?
Well, let me say that firstly, in South Asia, wherever you've had nationalists opposing the states, be it Kashmir in India or Tamils in Sri Lanka. I think the fact is that the states respond, and state response does provoke further bitterness and further anger and anxiety. So I don't think, whatever the peculiarities of the Pakistani state, which is also a fact, that situation has become problematic because of military continuing to be that powerful. However, you have a situation where politics does become militarized as well. And look at what Zulfikar Ali Bhutto did in the 1970s. The first major operation, there are actually one, two, three, four, five insurgencies when we talk about Balochistan. The first was pre-partition against the British. Then you had, which then crossed over into 1947. Then you had 1953. Then you had another one in 1973. 1973, there wasn't military in power. In fact, it was a military which had just lost its war against India in 1971. Yet then Bhutto allowed them to do an operation in Balochistan in 1973. Then you have couple of insurgencies building up, which are more recent. So I think the more recent one is where where the state kind of stopped, which is killing off Nawab Akbar Bukti. Now, Nawab Akbar Bukti, there were a couple of things, very important things, which were happening. Firstly, there's a demographic shift in Pakistan, a lot of younger population. So that younger population is not just in Punjab or Sindh, it's in Balochistan as well. So here is this younger generation which is anxious, which does not no longer expects anything from the Pakistani state. It doesn't feel that it's going to get any patient hearing, and on top of that, you have increase in abductions by the state, which is adding to the problems. And then finally, I think what is more important is that I think the cutoff line was the 2024 elections. Because in 2024 elections, what the state did, of course, there was election rigging throughout Pakistan, but Balochistan was even more peculiar because what they brought in were mafia heads or thugs to rule the province, completely disconnected with the state, pushing back nationalist parties.
So in a sense that reflects the sort of dysfunctionality that TCA Raghavan just spoke about. But I want to understand, Amar Mustikan, what do these Baluchi insurgents want? At the moment, they want a exchange of political prisoners with the hostages. But what do you really want? What is the agenda? Is the agenda some kind of quasi-freedom, total freedom? That's not going to, the Pakistan state is not just going to withdraw or disappear.
Yes, sir. See, the problem is we have got right now 5,500 Baloch freedom activists in ISI and military intelligence Gestapos. They are facing extreme brutal torture. Their daughters, their wives, their sisters, they have been protesting on the streets of Pakistan for 18 years now. The generals have looked the other way, and not only looked the other way, but when they do protest on the streets, they threaten them with rape. This is extreme kind of situation in Balochistan. And they try to always blame India. And that is their problem. You see, we have got no problem with India. I don't think Sindhis have any problem with India. I don't think Pashtuns have any problem with India. Just as I pointed out earlier, these are the Potohar generals who always have this jihad mindset. They are sometimes
but you want greater, no, but what's the ultimate goal? Is it greater autonomy? What is the goal? What is the Baloch? As I said, the Pakistan army is not going to withdraw from the area. So what is it that you're looking for?
We want justice. We want us to be treated as human, equal humans. We
Right.
want the Punjabi military generals to understand the meaning of Balochistan. Balochistan means the land of Baloch. They must respect that. And if they
Okay.
don't respect, yes, sir, let me say one thing. If if these journalists think they are going to take away the Gwadar port, they are living in a fool's paradise. If they want to keep Pakistan intact, I will ask them, request them, please forget Gwadar port.
Okay, I want to bring in at this moment TC Raghavan again because Balochistan sensitive area, and from time to time the Pakistanis have accused India of intervention. Can the Pakistani claims hold? Do you believe, as the Pakistanis claim, that India has used Balochistan as a lever to tell Pakistan to back off from Kashmir?
I think these claims have been made many times in the past. And as your report said, there is very little evidential or empirical backing up of such claims. For a long period of time, in fact, from 2001 to 2021, Pakistan's principal angst against the then US-led administration in Afghanistan was that it gave a free pass to India to operate in Pakistan's sensitive border areas. And there was, again, at that time, too, very little evidence provided for this. This argument is usually made in Pakistan for domestic purposes and largely as a cover-up because of the absence of a political dialogue with the Baloch insurgent groups, and secondly, as a cover-up to its own dysfunctionalities, which I had referred to earlier. The fact that a train can be hijacked does suggest a certain lack of knowledge about what groups which have been working against the Pakistani state for a long time, that the intelligence agencies were totally in the dark about it.
You know, it's showing a major intelligence failure, but it also, as we saw just now from Emmer Mustikhan, Aisha Siddiqa, a built-up anger. You mentioned the younger generation of Baloch, but there's a built-up anger. We are not being treated equally. Is Balochistan reflecting in a way the failure of the Pakistani state to give the people of Balochistan, some would say the Pashtuns of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, a sense that they too are equal citizens? This anger is building up and it's led today to this horrific train hijack.
See, firstly, let me just add two things. Firstly, your earlier question to Mr. Raghavan, I would like to point out that a couple of American scholars, including Dr. Christine Fair, has actually written about and mentioned India's involvement. Now, the fact is that when insurgencies happen, they do seek help from neighboring countries. So it's not something unimaginable. But that's a separate thing. The more important thing is that, what is happening in Balochistan. Yes, there is complete frustration. Now, not everyone in Balochistan is necessarily asking for a separate land. There is a demand, of course, there's a dominant demand for a separate land, because if you don't expect justice and equitable distribution of resources and access to your own resources, right over your own resources, then of course that demand does become natural and obvious. But the other thing is that, even autonomy, from autonomy to separation. But as I mentioned earlier, the main separation in the minds of the Baloch, because this movement that you see today, including insurgency, is not being controlled today by the Baloch Sardars living outside. This is primarily the Baloch middle class, educated youth, which are ready to fight. In fact, the problem is that these Baloch Liberation Army or others are not short of recruits now. There are people joining because people are bitter.
Okay, that
People
in a
are
sense
extremely bitter.
reflects how this insurgency movement has changed. that in a sense reflects the grave threat now it poses to Pakistan's
And just,
territorial integrity.
Yeah, just half a
Yes.
second. See, the last time an effort was made for kind of connecting, reaching out to Baloch people was under Musharraf. In fact, the most successful, Ziaul Haq was the most successful in appeasing Baloch Sardars and Baloch nationalist Sardars even. The second time, Musharraf said, let's have talk. A committee was made, including politicians, Mushahid Hussain Sayyid, Shujat Hussain Sayyid, Sayyid Shujat Hussain, and a couple of others. They went, spoke, they had an agreement, came back, Musharraf backed out. A third time, again, effort was made. One of the nationalist Pakhtun Milli Party, they formed the government. They went, spoke to Baloch nationalist Sardars, had an agreement, came back, military backed out. It's the military which refuses to talk to the people.
Okay, I want to leave it there because I think we've got a sense of just how prickly and difficult the situation now is for the Pakistani state and why this train hijack in that sense has brought the focus back on one of the lesser known insurgent movements of the region. Thank you all very much for joining me. We'll keep track of that story.